Welcome back, you're here with Nate28 and this is Crossbeats Production. Now this video is more or less just me fiddling around with Neutron versus Ozone, and I just really wanted to, I guess, do a video on what I thought about just messing around with it. So pretty much what I've done here, this is a master that I'm doing at the moment for Gabrielle Brie, which is an artist who's on the Down Under label group. That the track that I'm working on, it's going to be released on her album very shortly. The song's called Escape, and I just wanted to quickly see, you know, what Ozone versus Neutron would be like, in the sense of using the track assistant on Neutron to effectively try and use it as a mix bus, EQ, compression, all that sort of stuff. I pre did a kind of a master on this. I haven't completely finished mastering the track, but I pretty much did the EQ moves that I would normally kind of do using the techniques that I normally would do with mastering. And I mean, to be honest, all mastering generally is to sweeten up the track to a degree, to make it sound presentable and loud and clear for a master to be copied from, if you're going to copy the tracks or whatnot. So basically this track that I was working on, I kind of did my EQ moves, which most of the time I do reductive EQ for mastering. There are some times where you would want to have additive EQ, but for the generalization, reductive EQ tends to help you obviously get clarity in the mix and remove the frequencies that that would be interfering with other things. When it comes down to mastering, of course, mastering is a lot different to mixing, because you're looking at it as a whole track, not individual tracks, and you're not trying to do harsh EQ moves when you do mastering. You're more or less doing EQ moves that produce I guess a fine, minute detail in certain sections of the track. It's definitely something that you have to learn how to do over time. It's not something you could just probably pick up instantly. You definitely know over time what certain things sound good in tracks and how to get them and get the clarity and all that sort of stuff that comes down to it. But I usually use Ozone 6 for my mastering, and I use the standard version. I believe there's a couple of different features within the advanced version that I'd probably like to use on mastering, but at this point in time, I'm just using this purely because I guess this is what I want to pay for at this stage. And also, you know, displaying the advanced version on a tutorial sometimes is difficult for other people that can't afford plugins such as that. But even this plugin, it's not exactly cheap. You know, if you're adding up all types of plugins you have to pay for. But anyway, the reason for this track, this tutorial to show you this track, is give you an explanation on the techniques that I used with my EQ and kind of what I found that Neutron did. This is more or less just messing around and seeing what Neutron went to pick up and kind of where it took out EQ and where it gave additive EQ. So the cool thing about Neutron is it has a dynamic EQ, which in the advanced version of Ozone 6 it also has that feature, and that's probably why in a later stage I'll get that, because I tend to think that sometimes with mastering it's not exactly a crucial thing to have dynamic, but it definitely does help you get clarity in some certain things without having to boost that frequency consistently, and kind of like what a compressor would do. But anyway, enough said. Let's just give you an A/B between the two. I'll show you what Neutron did, and then I'll show you... Actually, I'll show you what I did, and then I'll show you what Neutron did, just to give you the explanation. So let's just put my my mastering EQ on here. I've got EQ, I've got dynamics, which is a multi-band dynamic compressor, and I've got an exciter. In this order, I just put them in this order because it sounded right to my ear at the time, and I might revise this later on. It just depends on what it comes down to. I've got the imager, and pretty much I'll just explain all these in a minute, but then I've got the maximizer at the end here, which is basically increasing the volume without destroying the transient as much as I could. So what I did with my EQ, first off, I put my EQ into mid-side mode, as I normally do with mastering, just so I can be really technical with the stereo and the mono frequencies and just get them clear and precise and how I want them to sound. So first off, not a whole lot of additive EQ, and as you can see, these EQ moves are very, very slight and minimal. And you do notice it. You do hear a difference, especially with just the EQ. So I'll just turn off these parts here first, and I'll just use the EQ, and I'll just go in and out of the EQ so you can hear what the difference is. Okay, so the things that I would recommend to focus on, especially with this track, is the low end of the track. When I got the track, the low end of the track wasn't really controlled as much as I would want it to be. And I noticed, especially with the kick and the bass, they kind of sounded flabby. Now, what I did with that to get that to correct itself a little bit was I used a bit of a high-pass filter on a resonant side of things. You can use a flat if you wanted to. It's just a little bit more harsh, and you can kind of control the resonant a little bit differently. So I tend to use the resonant because as you can see here, the curve is a little bit different, and it sort of dips out some of the low end, the real low end stuff, but then it preserves some of the, I guess, the topper part or the low end of the kick, and some parts of the low end frequency as well. So I'll just explain to you all these moves that I made so you can understand it, and then I'll just go to the Neutron and see what it did, because basically, as you can see here, it's got some certain moves here which I didn't do, and they may be good, they may be bad, it just depends, and I just want to explain how I went through mine. So obviously here I've got 183, which I dipped out a bit because it was kind of a boxy kind of sound that I picked up on. And then I've got the real kind of culprit mid-range, like kind of lower mid-range frequency there. But 522, I noticed that it had some kind of a boxy sound to that, and I noticed that Neutron did similar kind of thing. And Neutron, from what I've seen so far, Neutron does some really excellent, it does great EQ moves, like it really places them in the right spot and picks up the frequencies. So the next thing I did was kind of similar to what Neutron had, which was I think it was the 1048, yeah it was, and that's similar to what I did, so I did 1050, so it was pretty close, the moves that I chose originally. And then I dipped out some of this, which Neutron didn't do, which was kind of a harsh frequency to my ear anyway. It was at 3,837 hertz, and I dipped it out really a small amounts, so just minimal 0.7. Whereas what Neutron did here is it kind of boosted it a shelf, and it just boosted the whole entire top end frequency. What I did to do that in mine, which was a move that I made a little bit later, I think before, yeah, it was well before I had Neutron here. So I got the 12K, and I did a bit of a shelf boost by 1.1 dB. And then I got rid of some of that other stuff that's at 16 just to kind of even it out. You do notice, it depends on how the track is mixed as well, but you will notice with some tracks around about the 10K kind of frequency that's really irritating, that real high pitch sound that you'll get. But sometimes if the track's mixed and it doesn't have that, then you can boost on the mastering bus, the 2 bus. But it seemed to be the case on this, so it didn't irritate me too much. So I just, I dipped out some of that 16K and left it. But I used a Bell type of filter, so it wasn't like I was dipping out with a low pass filter. It was more of just a tiny bit of that stuff that's at 16K. There is a lot of air past 16K, and if you can hear that in the mix, then that's something you might want to keep. But in my particular occasion, I got rid of it. So that's the first thing I did with that. So let me just play the difference between mine, and then we'll go to Neutron and just compare the two. So what I found the differences between Neutron and my EQ moves were Neutron sounded a little bit different. Like they sounded that, especially with the top end because of the boost there at zero point 0.5, they boosted the whole entire frequency at the top. I felt like that was a little bit brighter. I don't think it was a bad thing though, to be honest. Like I was only just looking at this and thinking, wow, what moves could I have made versus what Neutron did. And when I looked at Neutron's moves and I just went in there, I kind of looked at it and I thought, wow, this is pretty smart, this track assistant. So I put the track assistant on there just to subtle and the broadband clarity, just so you can see the track assistant and what it used. And then when I went there, I just listened to the frequencies. Now just listen to this frequency for a start. See, it chose that frequency as a really smart choice because I felt that that's a real nasally kind of frequency, and it definitely wrecked the mix anyway, the master, sorry. And then it got this as a boost, and I feel like it boosted that because that was where a lot of where the vocal sat and where some parts of the instrument sat that really gave it clarity. It took out some of that's low end, the low end frequencies, but it used a high pass, but it was at 20 hertz. So I mean, if you're looking at that, it's definitely not doing drastic stuff. And of course, because it's on subtle mode, it didn't want to do the drastic stuff anyway. But it definitely gave the mix what I found, especially with the low end. See, the low end sound to me like it was a little bit more controlled, and that's kind of what you want, especially when you're going to use the maximizer on it later on. You want to be able to have controlled low end so you can push it as loud as possible without destroying it too much. That's, I mean, to be honest, I think that Neutron has some really fantastic features, and even if you were to just slap it on your master bus and just see what it does as far as moves, and then use those moves as a learning tool, and go into Neutron and see why it did it. Like go there and select the frequencies and boost it, and just hear what that frequency sounds like on the mix bus, and you'll kind of get to learn where those frequencies reside. And I think that this tool gives people that aren't fantastic at mixing a chance to learn what a good mix engineer might choose as far as EQ moves or techniques with EQ. Further to that, I mean, even with compression, it would still show you the kind of techniques that you might want to choose as a compression technique. It's not to say that these moves by any means, like I know there's a lot of people that have a disclaimer saying don't do this. This is not. It's a preset kind of thing. It's not. It's using the track assistant to choose what it thinks the frequencies are that are annoyance or hindrance on the mix. So this video, I just want to make a quick short video. I didn't want to take it too long, but I just wanted to kind of give a big thumbs up to Neutron and kind of just show that people that are trying to learn out there that they can pick up this and just really start using it and fundamentally start to learn what things are wrecking their mix and what they can do to make a mix better. So without further ado, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If there's anything else in the comments, just let me know. Otherwise, peace!